So, Christo, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of leadership.
Morning, Nick. Very, very good to be with you.
Thank you, Christo. Great to have you on the show. And before we walk into the future, can you please tell us a little bit about your background? Where did you grow up?
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, I was born and bred in Pretoria, so I grew up there. Went to the University of Pretoria, did my degrees there, and then I joined Wentzel in 1996. And I've been there ever since. So that's 29 years now at the firm.
And can you tell us what was your dream career when you grew up?
Yeah, interestingly, the first I can remember is I wanted to be an archaeologist. No idea where that came from. And then thereafter, I thought it would be great to be a movie director. So that, in fact, was my dream. And then that changed somehow to the law a bit later in life.
And Christo, who inspired you in your early days?
Yeah, it's in terms of just career choice, I recall that one of my teachers, I think her name was Miss Elis, she was the one that really planted the seed that I should be a lawyer. I suspect it was because I talked so much in class, so she probably thought that was a good idea, and I think that planted a seed for me that we don't come from a legal family, nobody else in the family is a lawyer, so that certainly kind of got my mind racing that perhaps that is a career to pursue. And then, of course, there were many role models, in my career itself, and we can talk about those in due course.
And Christo, you are one of the leading legal minds in South Africa. You've been recognized as a leading, possibly the top deal maker in the country. Can you tell us, looking back over your career, was there a turning point?
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think it's always there are always many turning points, I suppose, and perhaps I want to highlight two that I thought maybe of interest. So, as I mentioned, I started at the firm in '96. I came from Pretoria, quite an Afrikaans background. Joined a firm that was very much a very English firm, and those first couple of years actually were quite difficult. I didn't really find my feet. I obviously tried and did my work as best as I could, but it didn't feel like it clicked for me. And at a point in time, I discussed with the firm, I was thinking of perhaps leaving, and we kind of came to the conclusion, or they gave me the opportunity to go on secondment, and I went to secondment. It was very early in my career to a firm called Maitland. Now, if those of your listeners that will know, Wentzel started Maitland, which is a legal asset finance company based in Europe and in London. And I went there to the London office for a couple of months. And I think that for me, one was a very important turning point because it completely opened my eyes to the world and the possibilities, and gave me a real interest again in what I was doing. And while I was there, I received a call from a partner who left the firm and then rejoined. And before I left for London, I did a little piece of work for him. And obviously, then I left. And while I was away, his name was Bruce Cleaver. Again, your listeners may know Bruce ultimately, in later years, became the CEO of De Beers and the chairman and so on. But so I then returned from Maitland and worked for him. And those were incredibly important and formative years. Nowadays on very large transactions, we would have 100 and 150 lawyers on. So, it's become incredibly complex. But in those days, for large parts of large transactions, it really was just Bruce and me and, maybe one or two others throughout the work. So the access to work and how we handle these big transactions and so on, those were really very formative. So clearly a turning point starting to work for him after I came back from Maitland. That was the first one. But working for somebody that is that kind of important and iconic in the market is also challenging because it's difficult to eventually grow out of kind of that persona into your own practice. And when I was a very, very junior partner, again, still working for Bruce, I received a call from Vodafone out of the blue. I thought I hadn't worked for them before, but in later conversations it appeared that I did, and that's a different story. But they phoned me to brief me on a transaction where they were acquiring 15% of Vodacom from Venfin in those days, the Rupert family controlled company. And I was briefed directly to handle that transaction for them. And that transaction was, there were so many things. I was completely green, a very young partner, sitting at a point in time with some other advisors in Johan Rupert's kitchen, negotiating the term sheet and the announcement ultimately, and so on. And for somebody that, as I said, I think I was 30 at the time or so, very, very, very transformative for me. And I think that not only for me personally, but it changes people's perception of what I could do, both within the firm and then externally. The market started to recognize or see me slightly differently. And from then on, that really kind of snowballed into the next transaction and then the next and next. And so that was a very important kind of turning point in the career.
And Christo, as a senior partner and chairman of South Africa's leading legal firm, what is driving you? What is energizing you? I can imagine you have many balls to juggle. What gives you the strength and the stamina to keep going?
Yeah, sometimes one feels that you're just spinning, but I think that is throughout my life and career, I think the desire to make a difference, to create something not only in relation to the work you do, but also in relation to your relationships itself in the firm, outside of the firm, wanting to make your family proud. I suppose those are the things that really drive me. I think nowadays as well, we are in such a privileged and unique position, I think, in South Africa, because, as a firm, we're also a member of Business Leadership South Africa. And, just to see how the business community as a whole, when the country is going through kind of perhaps challenges or otherwise, really kind of band together then with government, trying to make a difference, making the lives of other people within our country and better, trying to create something for the future. I think that ability, I don't know of many countries where on so many levels, if you really want to make a difference, you can do so. And I think South Africa gives us that opportunity to do if you're willing to kind of put up your hand and assist. So I think that is something that not only for me, I think a lot of leaders within South Africa is driven by that.
Thank you. Now, Christo, looking into the future, and I know it's a big question, but what does the future of leadership mean to you?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Nick. We live in such an incredibly polarized and uncertain world. Geopolitically, obviously, changes within our country, AI in the last couple of years, that change is just absolutely constant and is just going to accelerate. So I think in such a complex environment, the need to get as much input as you can from as diverse a group of people is going to be incredibly important for leaders. So the ability to touch and to give access to as many people as possible to give you input, but then of course also not only listening to that, appreciating that, but ultimately taking that and then making decisions. You can't just listen, you also have to give direction. So it's the combination of the ability to get input from as wide a network as possible and then take the decisions. I think for future leadership, that is going to become more and more important.
And Christo, what have you learned that is most important for building future leaders? In other words, what is it we have to do more to build and develop and encourage future leaders?
Yeah, I think there's so many things. We're about to launch a program within our firm on building leadership, because lawyers generally, you get schooled in the law, but not necessarily in leaders. And actually almost in every position that a lawyer would have once they're a partner, they're in some form of a leadership position within an organization. And to build that, I think is really important. And I think lessons that I've learned is no journey is linear. You will always have ups and downs, and having an expectation that things are only going in one direction. I think that's the worst thing any leader can have. And perseverance, agility, resilience. I think those are the things that are going to be incredibly important. They've already, of course, and have always been important. But as the world becomes more and more complex, I think those things are just going to be more and more important.
And Christo, these are challenging times as the world is sliding from one crisis into the next. What is your advice for future leaders in terms of challenges? What are some of the biggest challenges they should expect to encounter and hopefully overcome in their career?
Yeah, I think I want to highlight perhaps two things. The one is time management. The importance of being able to manage your time. I think that's a skill that everybody should learn, and it becomes more and more important as you become more senior. So time management really vital. The second thing is there's so much information out there. We live in a world where there's now an avalanche of information. You would get support for a particular point of view, almost regardless of what your point of view is. You'll be able to find that. So the ability to kind of sift through that, really finding the essence, and as I said earlier, really trust other people, input from others. But once you have that, to trust your own instincts. I think those are skills and challenges that leaders would face, that they would need to find ways to overcome.
And Christo, if you were, and it looks like you are, designing a curriculum for future leaders, what are maybe one or two key skills that you would want to factor in and maybe teach?
Yeah, a couple of things. As I said, I think you need an agile mindset. The ability to be agile in difficult situations. I think the importance of relationships is something we really focus on. That's important. One, for a leader to be able to test their ideas. To have like a group of people that they are quite close to, that they can use for that purpose. Relationships also would give a leadership support, because it can get quite lonely sometimes in leadership. So having people that you feel have your back, I think that's important. But also, of course, no leader would have all the answers. So those relationships should be strong enough so that somebody can tap you on the shoulder to say, listen, this, you're going on the wrong path here. Perhaps you must correct, and so on. So I think power of relationships, trying to do that, an agile mindset. And I think the other thing that is perhaps one could highlight is divergent interests. I think good leaders have a lot of different interests as well, and that kind of keeps, again, your mind agile, but it also just provides, sometimes if you're too stuck in a particular in your job, for example, in what's going on there, and you don't have other interests, you could get perhaps too narrowly focused. So divergent interest, finding time to balance a little bit of what you're doing, your work life, with some other outside interests, I think is really important as well for longevity.
Now, Christo, you mentioned one of your mentors, and as a mentor, yourself being a mentor to many future leaders, can you maybe share a success story or two where you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yeah, it's obviously that's a role of a partner in a law firm is really to bring up the next generation as well, and thankfully I think there are some very successful stories within our firm, but perhaps I can highlight one which may be slightly unexpected. I was formerly appointed as a mentor to one of the young attorneys that started doing their articles at the firm, and at the end of, obviously we have regular conversations, and at the end of his first year of articles, as you know, it's a 2-year process, but at the end of his first year, in that December, he came to see me to say that actually he's worked out that perhaps the law is not for him, and he would really like to be a teacher. And that those conversations, obviously, having a firm hat, my first reaction was, that's a mistake. You shouldn't be doing that. You're halfway through your articles. If nothing else, complete your articles, etc. But the more I spoke to him, the more I realized that his absolute passion is not in the law. No matter how we want to create an environment where he loves it, that's not going to happen. His purpose is in something else, and it lies in teaching, and really just helping him and ultimately supporting that decision for him to eventually leave the firm and to pursue a teaching career. I think that was rewarding for me in a different way than kind of growing another partner within our firm. And I think what that talks to is, again, perhaps the agility to see things from a different perspective. And different people need different things. And if you can assist them in finding their passion, I suppose, and their purpose, I think that's a success story.
And looking back over your own career, Christo, are there any role models of leadership who you have encountered and maybe worked with that you feel future leaders should learn from?
Yeah, of course, within our own firm, I spoke about Bruce. There were many others within our firm, previous senior partners, other just partners, and just generally in the South African business community as well. We are blessed with some really fantastic leaders all around. But I think that my advice for perhaps younger leaders or others are, sometimes we have a role model that is kind of out there and is a very important person, but either in the firm, in the country, or in the world. But actually, often the leaders you learn most of are not those kind of iconic personalities. It's people that you deal with on a more regular basis, and there's always something in a leader that kind of you grow up with and that you can learn from, both positive stuff and negative stuff. We always forget that, a role model could be either way. You could also learn what not to do, or what type of leader you would not want to be. So, I don't want to highlight necessarily anybody more in by name, but I think those, for me, it's important to kind of look within your environment from people that you are more directly dealing with, than trying to find some iconic leader that's perhaps well known, outside of kind of your sphere of influence or your environment.
Thank you. Now, Christo, where can our listeners follow you, and how can they connect with you?
So obviously on the Wentzel website, my details are all there, my email address, etc. But also, of course, I'm on LinkedIn, and I try and have my term ends in a couple of months, and then I would hopefully be a little bit more active. But LinkedIn or Wentzel on the website as well.
And last but not least, Christo, what is your message to the millions of learners out there who have just finished school, who are looking to start a career? What are maybe one or two success principles that they should keep in mind?
Yeah, I think it's important to know there's not one magic trick. There's not this one secret that if you get that, then you'll be successful. Time and circumstance really have a tremendous impact on everybody's life. You may call it divine intervention or luck, perhaps, but so be open to that. But ultimately, play to your strengths. Don't expect things to go in one direction. Learn from successes and even more so from failures. But ultimately, find your own purpose. And if you play to those strengths, then eventually, even if it's not immediate, it will be recognized, and you will be successful.
Christo, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your wisdom into the future of leadership, and for inspiring so many future leaders.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a real pleasure.